During the 4th year of Solomon's reign, he began to build the temple of the Lord. This was 480 years after the people of Israel were rescued from their slavery in the land of Egypt. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 90 feet long and 30 feet wide and 45 feet high. As Solomon was building the temple, God gave this message to Solomon. Concerning this temple you are building, if you keep all my decrees and regulations and obey all my commands, I will fulfill through you the promise I made to your father David. I will live among the Israelites and will never abandon my people Israel. Solomon wanted to build a temple to give honor to the Lord's name, so he wanted to build it the best way he can. Solomon hired a man named Huram. Huram was extremely skillful and talented in any work in bronze. The weight of the bronze that was used in the temple could not be measured because there were so many. Solomon also made all the furnishings of the temple, and everything was covered with gold. When Solomon finished all his work on the temple of the Lord, he brought all the gifts his father David had dedicated, the silver, the gold, and the various articles, and stored them in the treasuries of the Lord's temple. It took 7 years to build the temple. When the temple was finished, all the elders and the heads of the tribes of Israel came to Jerusalem and brought the Ark of the Lord's covenant to the temple from the city of David. When all the elders of Israel arrived, the priests picked up the ark and carried into the inner sanctuary of the temple, the most holy place. When the priest came out of the holy place, a thick cloud filled the temple of the Lord. The priests could not continue their service because of the cloud, for the glorious presence of the Lord filled the temple of the Lord. Who built the temple? King Solomon. Where was the temple built? Jerusalem. How long did it take to complete the temple? 7 years. Why was the temple a special place? God said it was the place He would dwell with His people. Who carried the Ark of the Lord's covenant into the most holy place in the temple? Only the priests. What happened after the priests came out from the most holy place? The thick cloud, the glorious presence of the Lord, filled the temple.
Hello everyone! Today we're going to look into 1 Kings chapter 6 to 8 and see how Solomon built the temple and learn a little bit about the church. When David wanted to build a house for God, God did not allow David to build, but said that his son Solomon will. And as God said, Solomon started to build the house for God, the temple, in Jerusalem. Solomon was building the house for God to honor the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. and he wanted to build it the best he can. So Solomon hired a man who was highly skilled and experienced in all kinds of bronze work, and the weight of the bronze that was used for the temple could not be measured because there were so many. Solomon also made all the furnishings of the temple, and everything was covered with gold. Solomon built a beautiful house for God. When the temple was finished, all the elders of Israel and the leaders of tribes came to Jerusalem and brought the Ark of the Lord's covenant from the city of David. Then the priests carried the Ark of the Lord into the most holy place in the temple. And when the priests came out from the most holy place, the glorious presence of God filled the temple. After reading through today's story, led me to think about today's temple, the church, and the presence of God. We build church, and we want to build it the best way we can to make it beautiful. It's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with building a beautiful church. But is God's presence there? Is God pleased? I have never lived in a house from the day I brought the Israelites out of Egypt until this very day. I have always moved from one place to another with a tent and a tabernacle as my dwelling. Yet no matter where I have gone with the Israelites, I have never once complained to Israel's tribal leaders, the shepherds of my people Israel. I have never asked them, "Why haven't you built me a beautiful cedar house?" God never asked for or complained about it because the place did not matter so much to God. We can also see through the Bible that God had never asked His people to build a house for Him, but always wanted the hearts of His people. The building is very important, but God is not pleased through the building or the look of the church. God is pleased through the hearts of His people. God is pleased through our worship. Then the Lord gave this message to Solomon. Concerning this temple you are building, if you keep all my decrees and regulations and obey all my commands, I will fulfill through you the promise I made to your father David. I will live among the Israelites and will never abandon my people Israel. When you go to church or when you worship God, do you ever think about whether God is pleased? We often don't think about whether God is pleased with our worship or what we do in the church. Through today's story, I was reminded of the importance of God's presence in the church and in my life. If the church and our hearts are not focused in God, if our worship or anything we do in the church is not for the glory of God, then we cannot expect God to be pleased, and the church would become just a building. God received David's heart wanting to build a house for God. God received Solomon's heart wanting to build a temple to honor God's name. So God was pleased with the temple. When the priests came out of the holy place, a thick cloud filled the temple of the Lord. The priests could not continue their service because of the cloud, For the glorious presence of the Lord filled the temple of the Lord. I pray that the church does not become just a building, but where God is pleased to stay through our worship. So when we go to church, when we give our worship to God, let us pray for our hearts and pray for our worship to be pleasing to God.
Use as many crackers and marshmallows you want to build a temple. You can build it in any way you like. Use the marshmallow cream to glue the marshmallow and cracker together. Put the cotton candy around the temple to make it look like clouds surrounding the temple. The glorious presence of the Lord filled the temple of the Lord.